Today was our granddaughter's 7th birthday party, and my husband and I had been invited to a fancy restaurant. However, something seemed off with the waitress bringing the food. No, it wasn't just her behavior. Looking closely, it became apparent that only my husband and I weren't being served any food. Selena? What about our meals? As we wondered about this, our daughter-in-law, Selena, smirked and declared, "It's only for family, haha." Stunned and without understanding, we watched as the waitress left, looking uncomfortable. Lenny seemed just as bewildered. "Don't you get it?" With a sigh, she wore a defiant smile. In response, Selena's parents also smiled creepily, looking down on us. Why did they despise us so much? Both my husband and I were deeply hurt by this. It was so disappointing that there was no reason to stay any longer.
Let's go home.
Yes. I stood up, following my husband as we left the place. However, about an hour after we got home, a small guest appeared. Puzzled, I went outside to find our granddaughter, the birthday girl, standing there. My name is Stella Hale, a 55-year-old housewife. My husband, Stephen, and I have a good relationship and always go for a walk together every morning. Because of this, our neighbors often call us a loving couple. Sometimes, people ask us the secret to our happy marriage.
Well, it's about always being grateful.
He would answer cheerfully, and the neighbors would applaud. Standing beside him, I would feel proud and nod in agreement. We have one son named Lenny. Like his father, he has a gentle demeanor and is well regarded for his good nature. After graduating from university, he joined a large trading company and did well.
Things are going smoothly. I'm eating well, so don't worry.
He would say with a laugh over the phone, and a few years later, he said he wanted to introduce someone to us. The person who appeared before us was a petite, charming woman.
This is Selena.
Nice to meet you, I'm Lenny's girlfriend. With her clear, bright eyes, she looked directly at us. Lenny had met her at a hobby group gathering. Selena smiled throughout the conversation, making a good impression. Believing they would do well together, my husband and I blessed the two of them. The couple got married, and the following year, a baby girl named Camilla was born. Watching our first grandchild grow was truly joyous, and after every video call, I couldn't wait for the next one. What should we get her for her next birthday?
Her birthday. Didn't we just give her a gift recently?
I just want to prepare in advance. I was excited, while Stephen seemed slightly exasperated. But Selena seemed unhappy again today. Indeed, she had worn a friendly smile when we first met. But since then, she always seemed to have a sour expression. I didn't recall doing anything wrong. While I understood she might dislike meeting her mother-in-law, her blatant attitude was disheartening. Moreover, she subtly looked down on my husband and me. Lenny worked at a prominent international trading company in the city and occasionally went on overseas business trips. In contrast, we lived in the countryside, growing our own food and leading a simple life, which might appear humble to outsiders. "Stella, you live such a shabby life," she had once said, looking down on us. But my husband and I never thought our lives were shabby. You might see it that way. I smiled, brushing it off. After all, everyone has different values. Lenny didn't know about this. I didn't want to speak ill of the person my son chose, and there was no need to reprimand her. When I brushed it off, Selena started looking down on us even more. I didn't understand what drove her to act this way, but it made me sad sometimes. On the other hand, Camilla was different. When she was about to graduate from kindergarten, she once called to thank me for a picture book I sent her.
Grandma, thank you for the book the other day.
Her childlike gratitude made me feel her growth and almost brought tears to my eyes. You're welcome. Read it a lot. Camilla was gentle and kind to everyone. She got along well with me and Stephen. But Selena didn't seem to like this, and that day's call ended quickly. Camilla, you have your lesson. Time to end the call. Camilla had little time to play, being involved in extracurricular activities like English classes, swimming, and piano lessons. Selena wouldn't allow her to have much free time. Camilla, do you enjoy your lessons? Once, when they visited, I asked her this while Lenny and Selena were out.
Every day is so busy, it's hard.
I remember being shocked by her response. A child of only 5 or so spoke like an adult. Perhaps that's why she seemed to relish the freedom when visiting us in the countryside. The lack of free playtime was probably stressful for her. When Camilla turned 7, we were invited to her birthday party by Selena. The venue was a fancy restaurant famous for its fish dishes. The room we were shown to had a black-themed table and chairs, with chic wall decorations. At the table, Selena's parents sat neatly dressed, back straight, seemingly oblivious to our presence. Despite our arrival, they remained still, a tense atmosphere lingering. Lenny and his family arrived late, completing the group. Once everyone was present, the waitress started bringing out the food. But after a while, she seemed to check something with Selena. Only our meals were missing. Selena? What about our meals? As we wondered about this, she smirked and declared, "This is only for family, haha." Instantly, Selena's parents burst into laughter. Stunned and without understanding, we watched as the waitress left, looking uncomfortable. Lenny seemed just as bewildered. Ignoring him, Selena stood up and addressed everyone with her bright eyes. "Thank you all for gathering here today for our daughter." She bowed gracefully, and her parents applauded. She continued, "Our daughter has turned 7. It's a milestone, so I want to clarify family relations."
Selena. What do you mean by clarify?
She ignored Lenny's question and turned to us, speaking coldly. "I have a request for Stella and Stephen." "A request?"
What are you talking about?
"I want you to cut ties with Lenny and separate from us." We were speechless. What is she talking about? She explained that the reason she invited us today was to tell us this. In response, Lenny was outraged. He stood up with a clatter, speaking in an angry voice.
Selena. I wasn't told any of this. What did my parents do?
Lenny, please calm down. You're scaring Camilla. He glanced at Camilla next to Selena, who was looking at him with frightened eyes. Noticing this, he managed to suppress his anger and sat down quietly. But now my husband wouldn't stay silent.
Cut ties with Lenny. What on earth for?
Don't you get it? She sighed, then smirked defiantly. There's no choice, really. In response, Selena's parents also grinned ominously. They had those eyes that looked down on us.
Selena. Explain. Why do I have to cut ties with my parents?
You know my family runs a business, don't you?
Of course I know. So what?
We're upper-class people. But those two. She pointed at us with her chin and continued. They live in an old house, in the countryside where buses only run a few times a day.
So what?
That's why having poor relatives like them is embarrassing. I was left speechless. Stephen seemed to be the same, staring silently at Selina. Her tirade continued, detailing how unpleasant it was every time Lenny visited home. How miserable she felt spending time there. How walking down rural roads and dealing with the inconveniences of country life was unbearable. Complaints about frogs and insects followed. Finally, she brought up Camilla, lamenting the lack of a piano and an environment suitable for her lessons. She even claimed that living there would surely delay Camilla's development. Camilla seems fond of Stella and the others, but... She glanced at us briefly, then continued. Frankly, this is bad for Camilla's education. Her words, said with a frown, shocked Selina's parents, who exclaimed, "How could they?" They immediately started insisting Lenny cut ties with us. Neither Stephen nor I had any words to respond. We did live a rural life, but never expected such blatant rejection. Where we live is our choice. No one has the right to scorn us for it. And her claim that it would harm our granddaughter's development seemed unfounded. Memories of days spent with Camilla flashed through my mind. Whenever she visited, she played freely. Catching beetles with Stephen, and picking cucumbers from the garden, she always seemed happy. I don't know what face she makes at Selina's house, but at least with us, she seemed lively and carefree. Where did they get off looking down on us like that? Past anger, I felt utterly dismayed. Stephen shrugged, saying, "Good grief." He motioned to me, then stood up.
Let's go.
Yes. I stood up and followed him out. As we left, we heard the jubilant voices of Selina and her parents. Finally cut ties with the poor folks. Endured 7 years, they said. Poor folks. That word deeply hurt both Stephen and me. It was clear that was how they saw us all along, and it saddened me deeply. I wonder what Lenny will decide.
Yes. Whether he'll really cut ties with us.
If Lenny decided to cut ties with us, we would accept it. We discussed this on the way home. The only regret was not being able to see Camilla anymore. Looking forward to our granddaughter's growth, the thought of losing that was painful. We returned home with heavy hearts. I decided to make something simple for lunch and stood in the kitchen. Stephen, looking unsettled, was reading a book. We bottled up our indescribable feelings. About an hour later, the intercom rang. I pressed the response button, but only saw a small child's head on the screen. Puzzled, I went outside, and there was our granddaughter. Camilla? She smiled broadly and hugged me. Grandma.
I came with Daddy.
Startled, I looked behind her to see Lenny standing there, looking unexpectedly refreshed.
Mom, I'm sorry. I've decided to divorce Selina.
What are you saying? I was surprised and somewhat shaken. We invited Lenny and Camilla inside to hear his story with Stephen.
After you left, I was so furious I confronted them.
As Selina and her parents celebrated cutting ties with us, Lenny yelled at them to stop insulting his parents. They looked at him as if he was speaking nonsense. He explained to them that his parents were not poor. In fact, we had assets worth billions, from real estate investments. We manage various properties, leasing them to individuals and businesses in need. Not just in this rural town, but also in the city and even distant regions. Selina turned pale upon hearing this. No way. Then why do they live in such a shabby house? Disbelieving, she stammered. Her parents were also bewildered, asking Lenny why.
I told them, unlike you, my parents don't like a lavish lifestyle.
Indeed, Stephen and I prefer a minimalist lifestyle. Simply put, we live with only what we need for comfort. Our home, transportation, possessions, and clothing are all minimal. To them, our lifestyle might appear simple. But that doesn't give them the right to call us poor and insult us.
I told them I was disappointed in their behavior.
So, you declared a divorce?
Yes. I couldn't believe how they thought of you.
But it didn't end there. Selina and her parents went into a frenzy, refusing the divorce. Why didn't you tell us sooner?
I didn't think it was worth mentioning. We intended to manage on our own.
What are you saying? Bring them back.
You were the ones who wanted to cut ties.
You're siding with them. You're my husband. Her parents kept complaining that this wasn't supposed to happen. Eventually, their faces were turning pale.
I was horrified thinking about what they would have done if they knew earlier.
What happened next?
Then Camilla spoke up. Mom, stop, she said.
He stroked Camilla's hair, recalling the moment. Her voice silenced everyone. Just turned 7, she watched her parents' ugly argument, tears in her eyes.
Mom, why are you saying such terrible things? Grandma is kind.
Camilla, it's for your sake.
You always say it's for me, but you never actually see me.
What?
You're always selfish, Mom.
When have I ever?
I hate you, Mom. I want to be with Dad.
She clung tightly to Lenny's leg, refusing to let go. Selina and her parents desperately tried to calm her down. But she only grew more resistant.
I want to go back to Grandma's house.
The commotion brought back the hostess. Seeing the child clinging to her father while Selina and her parents crowded around must have looked suspicious. It was almost a situation where the police might have been called. But Lenny, holding Camilla, quickly left the restaurant, saying, "My daughter isn't feeling well." What happened to Selina and her parents afterward, we don't know. On the way to this house, my granddaughter revealed an unexpected truth to her father.
Her mom, Selina, was forcing her into lessons and planning to increase them even more.
Both Stephen and I were shocked. Even for gifted education, that would be too much for Camilla's body to handle. With tears welling up in her eyes, she looked down and said nothing. She must have been suffering under Selina's educational policies. From that day, the two of them started living in this old house. As we gathered their clothes, bedding, and other necessities, several days had already passed. We thought we wouldn't see Selina and her family again, but unexpectedly, they suddenly visited. Everyone gathered in the living room, and I sensed something was off with Selina and her family's desperate expressions. there was none of the composure they had last time we met. "We're here to ask you to withdraw the divorce from Lenny." She began with this and started explaining their current situation. Their business was failing, and their finances were in dire straits. Yet, they were still spending money to maintain their affluent lifestyle. They had almost no savings. That's when they set their sights on Lenny's income. He worked for a foreign trading company and had a stable and high income. So, they intended to siphon off his earnings entirely. Siphon off is such a harsh term. We just wanted him to help with our household finances.
What do you think of our son?
He raised his voice in rare irritation. "Weren't you counting on my husband's earnings as well?" she said smugly, although it was completely off the mark. "Why would we rely on our son's income? Living in such a shabby house, it's not surprising to think that, is it?" She thought it was terribly wasteful.
"So you schemed to cut me off from my parents? That's crazy."
"Please don't say that. I'm reflecting on my actions now." Lenny firmly refused to retract the divorce. Their miscalculation was not knowing that we, his parents, also had significant assets, even more than Lenny. They seemed to want to reconcile with Lenny to get their hands on our inheritance. My husband and I exchanged surprised glances at their obvious motive. To them, it might be just money, but it's our precious savings. It's for our retirement and to be passed on to Lenny and Camila's future. The thought of it being squandered made me increasingly angry. "I'm sorry, but we have no intention of giving you our inheritance." "What?" "Also, regarding Lenny's divorce, neither my husband nor I intend to interfere. It's a matter between the two of you." We told them to discuss it thoroughly and tried to send them away, but Selena and her parents started yelling. They called me a terrible mother-in-law, so I had no choice but to take a firm stance. "By the way, your rent for the downtown office has been overdue for 6 months, hasn't it?" When I said this, they fell silent and their faces turned pale. I didn't want to bring this up, but there was no other choice. We knew your business was struggling, so we were being patient with the overdue rent. They looked like they wanted to ask how we knew, and my husband delivered the final blow.
"We have no choice. We'll show you this."
He quietly handed them an envelope. Though his actions were calm, I knew he was definitely angry. Selena took it fearfully and opened it. Inside was a payment demand for the overdue rent. "A lump sum payment for the overdue rent? But why do you have this?" She read it with trembling hands. The answer was written in the demand notice. "Landlord, Stephen Hale.
The office you're renting is managed by us."
Selena was stunned and lowered her head in disbelief. Her parents had the same reaction, turning their pale faces towards us. They tearfully asked if we could waive the lump sum payment. But we remained silent, showing no intention of complying. They should be grateful we've overlooked it until now. Selena looked shocked and raised her head abruptly. "Couldn't you extend the payment deadline? A lump sum repayment for 6 months is too much." Her voice sounded as if she'd come up with a great idea, but we shook our heads.
"No. We need you to pay it all at once."
Additionally, Lenny handed over another envelope.
"Here's something from me too."
Selena hesitantly took it. Compensation and a demand for Camila's custody.
"I recently checked my bank account. I'd left the finances to Selena, so I didn't know, but..."
She flinched and looked at Lenny with a strained face.
It seems you've used a lot of my money.
Not only luxury brand bags, clothes, and accessories but also spa fees were withdrawn. Realizing that retracting the divorce was inevitable, Selena and her parents looked hopeless. They surprisingly handed over Camila's custody easily. Whether it was for Camila's sake or because they were shocked to be called poor by those they had despised as poor was unclear. Without saying anything further, they left in a daze. A week after Selena's unexpected visit, the overdue office rent was paid in full. We didn't know where they got the money, but it didn't matter. Also, the compensation to Lenny was paid about a month later. Selena sent Lenny a message saying she wanted to talk again, but...
What's there to discuss now? This is absurd.
Enraged, my son blocked her messages and decided to communicate through a lawyer. Later, we heard from the neighbors that Selena's family had gone completely bankrupt. Right after hearing this, they contacted us about vacating the office. They must have judged that continuing the business was impossible. After completing the cancellation procedures, Selena fled. As an aside, another company applied to rent the now vacant office. So far, they haven't missed any rent payments. As for Selena's family, they were left with a huge debt and started working to pay it off. However, they had little experience working under others. They constantly had trouble with their superiors, colleagues, and even clients, resulting in frequent job changes. Unless they change their haughty attitude, this will likely continue. After the divorce was finalized, Selena contacted Lenny again. Give Camila back. What was she thinking? Stephen saw through her intentions.
She probably wants to demand child support. What a disgraceful lot they are. Well, whether to comply or not depends on Camila.
When we asked our granddaughter, she shook her head.
No. I want to stay with Dad and in this house.
We respected her wishes and replied to Selena that we could not comply. Afterward, Selena's family sold their house and moved into a cheap apartment. The apartment wasn't managed by us, but by a real estate investor friend. Recently, we heard from him that the family was constantly fighting and causing trouble for their neighbors. Those troublesome people are a problem wherever they go. Stephen and I could only shrug our shoulders. Meanwhile, Camila had adapted well to living with us. Even when she had to transfer schools, she showed no displeasure, rather, she seemed happy. She had stopped all her extracurricular activities. English conversation, swimming, and piano didn't seem to interest her much. She started spending more time with her new friends. A little before summer, she said something surprising.
Grandma, I want to join the Girl Scouts.
Girl Scouts?
Yeah. My friends from class invited me.
It seems her 3 close friends in class were members of the Girl Scouts. They even had a program she could try on Sundays. Although she had said she didn't want to do any more extracurricular activities, now she was taking a step forward. This made me very happy, and I decided to support her. When I told Stephen, he felt the same way.
That's great. Let Camila do what she wants.
Thank you, Grandma, Grandpa.
Camila jumped for joy, but Lenny interrupted.
Wait a minute. You'll need a guardian to accompany you at first. I'll go with you.
Camila's face lit up even more at his words. She seems to be smiling more than ever. And I feel like I hear thank you from her more often. Who could have influenced her like this?
Who knows?
We exchanged glances, savoring our happiness and laughing together. How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.